Trying to reconnect. There we go.
We are live, and it is time to launch our fourth episode. God, it's crazy that time has flown by. This is actually our fifth week in a row of doing this show. And if you guys are just tuning in for the first time and you're new around here, let me welcome you. I'm Dr. Mondo. I'm a licensed therapist, academic researcher, public speaker, and my passion is basically about talking story with people, talking to people about their weight loss transformations, not just talking with them, but supporting them as they go through their weight loss transformations. And so my website is drmondo.org, drmondo.org, if you want to check out the programs, the blog, the assessments.
In your story, you can check that stuff out. But what this broadcast is really about is it's about almost a window in, and it looks like we got Anthony. Anthony, how you doing, man?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. And in a minute,
Oh, good.
I'm going to have my moderator who's joining me tonight and helping out behind the scenes. Everyone, thank you so much for John Gomez. John, if in a minute you want to put the live on that screen too, so I could see Anthony. Yeah, we're getting dialed in, man. And I'm just kind of telling people about what this broadcast is all about, which, again, it's about telling people stories. So tonight you're going to get a chance to hear Anthony's story, but it's not about just talking about like, hey, what did you eat to lose weight? Or, hey, it's not gonna be about that. It's going to be really the untold story behind Anthony's transformation. And so that's what you'll hear tonight. You'll hear about the emotional side of his journey. You'll hear about his why. You'll hear about how his relationships may have changed, kind of all of that stuff. So anyway, Anthony, it's really cool to have you on here. How are you doing? First of all, I know it's like 10 o'clock
Thanks.
back there on the East Coast.
Yeah, 9 o'clock. Not quite my bedtime, but it's getting.
Oh yeah, 9 o'clock. Right. Yeah, it's not 4 hours ahead, but it's
Right.
like it's getting there. By the time this is over, it'll be 10 o'clock.
Might as well be. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me on. I really, really love what you're doing, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation, as I got to mention to you when we spoke a little bit earlier, because
Yes, me too.
I love really digging in on this stuff, whether it's the mindset or the psychology part of stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to my therapy session tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, your therapy session. Did you sign the informed consent? We shouldn't joke
No,
about
I
this
didn't get
because,
anything. No,
the
just-
reality is, just so everyone knows, this is
I
not
was
therapy.
joking.
Yeah, it's a
yes.
disclaimer. I can't do therapy out of state. However, the feedback we've had from the first few episodes has been people go like, man, that was almost like therapy. And, I'm almost kind of like good because I want people to see, and in fact, often what I get people say is that it's amazing how vulnerable and it's empowering other people to be vulnerable about their stories. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to have you on tonight. And yeah,
Thanks a lot.
we'll see we'll see where your story goes. I think the big thing that I told you, and I think a good launch part for tonight's, conversation is just letting you know, first off, thank you, not just for being here, but thank you for being so willing to share your story, because a lot of people don't necessarily know this, but they know I went plant-based about 4.5 months ago and that I've been loving it. And if they're friends with me on Facebook, they hear enough about it, right? But one of the things they don't know is the fact that one of my, Anthony and I were talking about stages of change, or like, how do we get people into this action stage? Well, in my pre-contemplation about plant-based, I would go on Forks Over Knives and I would click on success stories. I highly recommend this, by the way. And I would just look for people who I would, go, does this guy, I don't know if this guy can relate to me, or no, I don't think she can relate to me. And so when I found Anthony's story, I was like, wow, I can really relate to Anthony. I'm 34 and I know that you have kids, and just also too, the more I've read about your story, I felt like, wow, I can relate to you. So first off, thanks for being here. But second of all, thank you so much for sharing your story, because truly, Anthony, you inspired me, and I would not be eating plant-based if it wasn't for your stories. I just want to,
Wow.
start off by saying thank you so much, man. It's an honor to talk to you.
Wow. Well, it's really my pleasure, and thank you for telling me that, because it is easy to feel like a broken record. We're just saying this, saying the same things over and over, and it's really,
Yeah.
you know this because we've spoke, but I put it out there, and I know others do the same thing with the hope that somebody will grab onto it and will do something with it. So I really appreciate you telling me that, and I'm really happy that it helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the inspiration only has continued. You recently were on the Megyn Kelly show on NBC, right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
How
Yeah.
did that come about, by the way?
So, you just have to have good friends. No,
Yeah,
no.
I've been
So
noticing that.
actually,
Yeah.
my friend, Josh LaJohny, who we've been
Yeah.
linked up for a long time now. He actually got a group of guys together who have done this, and he created a like an online, a Facebook group for us. It's called a running club. We all do run. We all, most of us eat a plant-based diet, and but it's really he created a place that we could get together and talk about stuff. The one thing that we all have in common is we've all made major life changes,
You
and
guys have all lost a ton of weight, right?
a ton of weight. And what was interesting to me, so he got on the Megyn Kelly show because he was on the cover of Runner's World. I mean, he's just been getting amazing publicity, and he just invited a few of us from the group to join. And I'm right here in New Jersey. It was very easy for me to get to New York, so I was actually thrilled to go. So I really appreciate him inviting me on. So that's how I got on the show. But what was interesting to me, I went back and looked at it. They put 4 members of the Missing Chins lost a combined total of 785 pounds, I think it was.
Wow. Holy
So
cow,
that's 4 of us.
yeah.
But now I've only lost 160 pounds. So
and you say
that,
only, by the way, which is amazing. Yeah.
Well, I say that like that because of those 4 guys, I'm pulling the average down.
Wow.
Right? Because in order for us to lose 785, and I only lost 160, that means that all those guys lost 200 pounds. Something like that. I didn't do the math in my head that quickly, but do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of group that he has really helped to pull together. And many of us knew each other before he created the group. And a lot of others I've only met because he created this group. But it turns out that we have this amazing place where we can go and really talk about the things that other people may not understand, and probably some of the things that you and I will get into here tonight, because I know we can relate to the same things.
Yeah, I wondered that because, in my research, one thing I found has been that people who are successful long term, they're connected to it's stage 7 of the program we do of Rewrite Your Story on my website. And it's you have to be connected to a support system that speaks your language. And when I'm speaking the language of weight loss, and in this case, drastic weight loss, because, one of my beliefs is that we don't view this as a major life transition the same way that we view having a child, the same way we view getting married, getting divorced, moving across country. But this is a major life transition. And so just as we would have support groups for those things I just mentioned, or we would talk about them openly, often people don't talk about what their experience is to go through a weight loss transformation. So that's something I had wondered when I heard about you guys. Like, I wondered, do you guys get into, some of the stuff that you and I have just touched on? Like, do you guys get into like, man, what is it like to look in the mirror and just, see someone that you hardly recognize at times? Or do you guys get into some of those types of conversations?
We get into everything. Those
Really?
exact
That's
things
awesome.
come up. I mean, the fact that I lost my weight, I finished losing weight almost 11 years ago now. And still to this day, I look in a mirror and I only see my waistline. Like,
what do you mean by that? You only see your waistline? Yeah.
I don't see my bony shoulders. I don't see my thin arms. I see this kind of little bit of skin and this little bit of belly that is left over my waistline. What I mean by that is I don't necessarily see everything that I've accomplished, and I don't see the new me. I'm still kind of focused on the areas that I would like to change a little bit more, right? And I don't expect people to understand that, and I definitely don't expect people who haven't been through it to understand it. But I'll tell you, in that group, in that environment, and you've had Adam on here. I mean,
Adam said,
any of us could just finish our sentences for each other. We've learned that about each other. Like, it just clicks. We really get it. So it is nice to have that support system. And it's relatively new for me because I absolutely did not have that when I was doing this. I did start over 12 years ago, and there weren't a lot of people. And I remember there was a guy named Larry Bennett, and then
Okay.
there was Josh LaJohny, and those were two of the other guys that I knew. I had
Huh.
met plenty of ladies and women who had done this, and I met them through people like Dr. Furman, different speaking engagements that we were doing,
Yeah.
things like that. But I didn't really meet any, I'm going to say young men, but any
Yeah.
30-year-old men who had really done this themselves and were kind of owning it. I'm sure they were
Right.
out there, but maybe they weren't putting themselves out there as publicly and things like that.
Well, yeah, because you got a couple things there that stand out to me at least. Like you have, us as men, we are already up against, one thing about this broadcast, I have women scheduled on here, some women guests that I'm really excited. My
Yeah,
goal
yeah.
is to have a balanced perspective on this transformation story. It just so happens that the way the guests got scheduled, that we only have one woman, and she's coming on, Chef AJ, in a couple weeks, which I can't wait for, to get her perspective on the journey. But I think one thing that it's unique to have, guys are up against this, right? Like we get taught this thing that, we need to be tough and strong, and talking about our emotions and stuff like that's just not something you do. And then you add on the other layer to it, which is the fact that there's so much stigma around obesity. And,
Yeah.
all anyone really wants to talk about is the highlight reel. Like, man, Anthony, you look amazing. Oh, you're still focused on your waistline. Ah, man, come on. You look great. And so
Yeah,
I think
get
a lot of
over it,
times, yeah,
whatever,
get
stuff
over
like
it.
that. Yeah.
But I think only in those groups where you have that support system that speaks the language, can you guys really go like, wow, no, I know what that's like. In fact, this is the thing I'm focused on, and stuff like that. To that point, do you find that everyone in your support system that speaks the language, do you find that that everyone has like that one thing that they're still kind of focused on, even if they're trying not to be, like whether it's the waistline or yeah, does everyone have that in your
Um,
experience?
I don't know that everyone has it. I mean, everyone has different things going on. And um but I will say it seems like that we can all relate to each other,
Mm,
you know. So I would imagine, and different people come up and they talk about different kinds of things, but really I think it's just the general kind of the concept of having been on this journey and having made, significant life change and having dealt with everything that kind of comes along with that. And
yeah.
and really, when I say dealt with, having really reaped the benefits of everything that comes with that as well, because I'm not trying, I want to make really sure not to paint a picture that it's like difficult, or that it's this process, or even that this is necessary. I mean, I was standing on my own for a long time, before I had this group, this tight of a group of people, and now it's just like fun, and most of it is joking about the stuff, like to tell us ourselves how silly we're being about these things, like
To
these other
ground
people have
you.
been telling us, but we can just kind of now laugh it off. I mean, it's still there, and I'm not saying laugh it off like hide it. When I was really obese, I would try to laugh that off to basically deflect, right? To
Yeah.
draw the attention away to something else. So I don't mean that way, but now we can really just kind of relate and realize how silly we're being, and then that kind of reminds ourselves that it's just a silly thing that's there, but it doesn't really need to consume us. It doesn't need to obsess. There's
Mm,
nothing I need to obsess over and things like that.
yeah. Yeah, you bring that up. I mean, I want to jump actually back there a little bit,
Yeah,
too, because I am interested to know your story. When I read,
yeah,
there's a great Huffington Post article, and you wrote that article, didn't you? Or was it like a
yes,
guest
yep,
spot? Yeah. So you guys should check that out. Google Anthony's name, and you'll see the Huffington Post article. I shared it on my page. But you kind of like get into a little bit more of, like your upbringing and stuff like that. And everyone who gets to know me knows that I'm really open about my story too. And that's why I'm curious. I was a latchkey kid that found comfort in food, and I know I'm not alone in that. But what was your backstory to your journey? And looking back, like what was your relationship with food? It sounds like you were a kid that grew up and you were overweight at a young age, or
yeah, yeah. So I grew up in North Carolina. So my parents
mm,
split up. I lived in New Jersey. My parents split up. My mother and brother and I lived in North Carolina, and that's where I stayed during the school years. And then over the summers, I would come up and I would stay with my dad in New Jersey over the summers and over the Christmas holiday. So I was really
like
going back and
young,
forth from the third grade.
Third grade.
So
Okay.
this was
Yeah,
back
so
when my mom would have to walk us on the plane,
7.
sign us. Yeah. So third grade is what? Yeah, 7 years, 6, 7 years old, something like that. So
like that, yeah.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, forever. You know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's a tough age, right? Like, I mean, I
forth.
imagine, right? Like to have all that going on. But do you remember much of like what that was like for you at that time when all that stuff was happening with your parents?
Yeah, I remember. So my parents had split even earlier than that, you know, before the first grade, but that's just when we moved to North Carolina. So
so the move,
that part,
in addition to that
part, I don't really, you know, remember very much. And the going back and forth, you know, the truth is it's kind of fun. It's like an adventure. You know, my mom put my brother and I in an airplane. She signed us over to this flight attendant. And then when we got to New Jersey, the flight attendant signed us over to my dad, and we went on. It was pretty neat. But and we had a group of friends in North Carolina during the school year, and then we had we still had our friends in New Jersey, so we would come back here and we would get to catch up with them. So it wasn't. I want to make sure that I say, you know, it didn't seem like a bad situation, but it was a very different lifestyle on the two ends. You know, my mom, you know, when we were with my mom and stuff, we had to do schoolwork, and we had to, you know, we actually had all the responsibility and stuff. Also, we lived in a neighborhood where we had to drive everywhere. And then my dad lives in a town in New Jersey, and from his house we can walk to everywhere. So the biggest thing about that for me was, you know, when I'm like 12 years old, I can walk into town and go to a pizza place and buy myself my own slice of pizza. You know, so.
And that was a pretty regular thing. Like, was food a big part of childhood growing up? So
I don't remember exactly what age like those things started, but something happened between the summer between the 4th and 5th grade. So
yeah, and I think that's the part that you mentioned. You mentioned that in the Huffington Post article. Like you said, something happened, and I'm not sure what it was. Yeah, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know how, but I gained weight that summer for sure. And my friends noticed because I got back to North Carolina. They hadn't seen me in almost 3 months, and all of a sudden, I was the big guy. You know,
interesting. Do you feel like your identity changed from that moment when you got back with those friends? Like you were the big guy?
Absolutely, because and probably because they didn't see it happen gradually. They just saw, okay, all of a sudden Anthony's a big guy, and then when it was, so I think that since it happened from their perspective, all of a sudden it was more noticeable. So people talked about it. And for some reason or another, I owned that like from day one. And I looked at myself as the big guy. So
even though prior to that, that wasn't part of your story, or that wasn't what you felt like you were defined by, like, that's interesting that you would just own it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And I don't know how it happened, but I did. And I basically, that's how I identified myself, you know, into my adult life. I mean, little things like when you know, I wouldn't ask girls out because I felt like I was unattractive, right? Because I was the big guy again, or you know, yeah. So even looking at pictures, there's all my normal weight friends, and then there's me in there. So I had enough of these reminders. But going into like fast forward, I'm in my 30s. My wife and I buy a home, and we want to go meet the neighbors. Like, I wouldn't go to the neighbor's house without her, because here I am. I'm 6'4". I'm 360 pounds. You know, I have a 54-inch waist. I'm tall. I'm big, and I never felt like I belonged knocking on a stranger's door, because I felt like I would feel either intimidating or somehow off-putting or something like that. You know.
Where a lot of that was around your size of like being the big guy, it sounds like.
I just had it kind of related to myself as being the big guy. So if I went with my wife, who's 5'1" or 5'2",
there's quite a difference there. Yeah.
Yeah, and a normal weight, and we go over somewhere, then I feel like there's not going to be an intimidation factor. But I feel like if this big guy goes and knocks on a door, and let's say it just happened to be, you know, a woman home alone or a child home alone or something like that. these are the things that went through my head. Like, I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't want to put someone else in that situation because of who I thought I was. Now,
So there was really a part, it sounds like, sorry to cut you out, but it really sounds like there was a part of your story that, early on, the kid, you did what I think a lot of, there's like this pathway we can go. We could either embrace the big guy. When I did my research, The Biggest Loser, there was folks that would talk about like embracing it and being the funny fat guy or the funny big guy, right? And then like there's other folks that would just really feel like, well, and the funniness, there was a defense mechanism in that, right? Of course, like deep down was that insecurity, but it was hidden through the comedy. And then the other end was like just isolation. Like, I'm going to withdraw altogether because I feel so insecure and I just don't feel like I belong. Right.
yeah.
But it sounds like it almost progressed to a point, like when you were right before you lost the weight, that like, was there a part of you that was almost like kind of like ashamed or like did that start to wear on you over time? Like, you owned it, but did it wear on you to be the big guy in terms of your identity and emotionally?
Yeah, maybe own it is the wrong word, but I internalized it, or so I
Yeah.
identified with it.
Yeah.
I did it the second way. I did it from the place of having, like, being self-conscious of it, not. I was never the confident big guy, right? I don't know how it looked from the outside, but inside, I wasn't confident. I wasn't embracing it. I didn't feel like the biggest, most powerful person in the room. I felt like the person who didn't belong in the room, and the
Yeah.
person who would want to try to get out of the room as soon as possible, or do
Mm.
anything I could to not draw attention to myself.
Yeah.
Is
Wow. That resonates. I hear you, man. I think that resonates for me. It probably resonates for so many of our listeners out there. It's this experience of
Yeah,
almost wanting to be invisible in some ways. Yeah.
yeah. So going back, so just getting back to the story. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I identified myself, and then and I had tried to lose weight several times growing up. And I would be able to lose weight for a few months or something like that, and then it would come back, and it would probably come back a little bit more. And then in the early 90s, I had a pretty good run where I actually lost. I probably got myself below 290 pounds and
Hmm.
kept it there for maybe a year or so.
And
And
for frame of reference,
yeah,
and I'm not a big weight guy, but like, what is your
yeah,
weight roughly now? Just so
yeah. So
people that
now
so listen.
I've been about 200 pounds for the past 11 years.
So again, you 360 at one point, but to get under 300 was like a huge victory for you, I guess is my point.
Yes, yes. Okay, so going up to that point, I was probably 340, 330, in that
Hmm.
area. And then when I got down to 290, even 280, like, I felt like I was like significantly slimmer,
Yeah.
svelte. I felt svelte at 290 compared to how I walked around normally. So I wanted to say that where I felt like I got to the point where I actually lost weight to the point where I was feeling pretty good about myself.
Hmm.
So but then, even during that time, I was very physically active, and I was going to school, but I spent a lot of time. I was spent a lot of time skateboarding. I didn't have a car. I walked everywhere I went, or I rode my bicycle. There
Hmm.
was all of this stuff going on. So that was probably helping me to keep the weight down, because then when I got a job, my first kind of sedentary job, and my lifestyle changed, and I shifted to where I was sitting around most of the time, and then I was tired when I got home in the evenings, and I wasn't going out as much and doing as much physical activity. The weight really piled on, and that got
Hmm.
me to the point where I got up to, I think my heaviest is right about 360 pounds.
360 pounds. Now, do you feel like looking back, with hindsight, that were you overeating a lot? Like, we'll get to like whether or not it was emotional eating in a bit, but I don't know, like looking back, were you doing a lot of overeating, or was it just like, no, I'm eating, I thought, I'm just eating the wrong things and I'm eating,
You know,
calorie dense versus nutrient dense food, stuff like that.
most of my friends my entire life have been normal weight, and I always felt like I ate the same things that they did.
Mm.
Looking back, I probably did eat a little bit more than the people around me, but not, it didn't seem like a lot more.
Hmm.
I never, like, it was never that I was the one eating and no one else was eating. You know, I ate when other people
Right.
ate, and I didn't eat when other people ate. And we went to the same restaurants and we bought the same food or we cooked the same things. Maybe I got a little more enjoyment from it, or
Hmm.
I don't know the answer, but I definitely did get plenty of enjoyment from food. And I liked the idea of making these rich, the rich foods, and by eating these things, and I definitely did get pleasure from eating, but I didn't
Yeah.
seem like I wasn't eating twice of what my friends were eating, even though I
Hmm.
ended up being twice or more the size of all my friends. So I kind of just told myself that my body packs on weight. Being
Hmm.
6'4", I was taller than everyone else. Having a 54-inch waist, I was wider than everyone else. And I
Hmm.
just, I would joke and I would say, look, I'm just a giant. Yeah, I'm twice as wide as you. I'm twice, I'm almost twice as tall as you too. Like I'm just big. So there was a lot of that going on. And that's where I kind of just tried to justify it or sell myself on it. And,
Yeah. I know
you know,
that.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, and the thing that I would like to, eventually later, a little bit later, get into with you on that is, how basically unempowering those kind of things are.
Well, I
And
mean,
I realize that now.
jump into. I mean, that's. I guess I'll lead you into that because that's what I'm wondering is, as I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking, first of all, that's something I relate to.
Yeah.
Again, too, it's when you go through this cycle of like trying so hard, and I hear you. You worked hard, man, to try to lose weight, and you were really being active, and it's so frustrating when you watch other people just, the only conclusion that you seem to get, and you know, I think in some ways it is a rationalization, but in other ways too, we're just trying to make sense of this thing. And there's this belief of like, oh, it's genetics or I'm just meant to be this way. But I'm really curious that you lost the weight and you gained it back. You eventually got to a point where you just accepted this as being part of who you were, even though you
Yes.
didn't love it. And there was probably like your degree of like your sense of agency of like how much you could probably change it probably wasn't that high. Like, how does someone at that point in their life develop motivation to give it another shot and then lose the weight that you did, which is 106? Like, what happened, I guess, to
Yeah.
create that
So
sort of, yeah.
a perfect storm of accidents happened. you
Mm,
know. So there were things on purpose. So I got married. I started a family, and when I was and I bought a life insurance policy. So even
mm,
growing up, I would always donate blood, and I would treat that as a mini physical, because sometimes I would get, actually more often than not, I would get a letter a month later in the mail that said that they weren't able to use my blood for whatever reason.
Were
So
you
I
trying,
was,
was that like something in your psychologically, like you were trying to check to see whether you're okay in like an indirect way, or that was just part of the,
yes.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it was
interesting. Okay.
that, and also all of my friends were going to donate blood. So
Oh,
so
okay. Okay.
so I'm not going to say I'm not going to go because sometimes they don't take my blood, right? Because I would rather just go and do it and then quietly find out later that they didn't take my blood. But when those letters came, it was a little bit of a bummer. But fast forward now to my wife is pregnant with our second child, and I
Mm,
went to get another life insurance policy, a 20-year term life insurance policy, and
mm.
I'm 33 years old, and I got flat out denied.
So
I
when they
had
flat out deny you, that's like them saying what?
that's them saying we don't expect you to live for 20 years, and
Oh
there
my
isn't a
God.
premium high enough that we can charge you that's going to cover our side of this
Wow.
equation if we have to pay out on this
Wow.
policy. So
What
that
was that like for you to get that news? I'm feeling devastated for you just hearing that.
Yeah, it was really hard. Um, it was tough, reading that. It was really tough because I know how those things work. Like, that's not some guy on the end of there with a pen writing that letter, right? That's a computer where they're plugging in all of my information. And the
Mm.
computer is making this decision based on
Based
all
off,
the data
yeah.
that they've been able to collect over time, right?
Wow.
Because they
Wow.
want to sell policies, and they probably don't mind selling high risk policies as long as they don't have to pay out because they actually make more on them, right?
So you're
But
able to peel through all these layers intellectually and go, And even with that said, they're saying I'm too risky.
Exactly. So, and the best thing that that did for me was it made me take a really deep look at my situation. Like I took a really good look at my life. And while on the surface things were good, meaning I was working, I was starting a family, we had a home and that kind of stuff. But there was stuff that was hard that I did just kind of let breeze by. And what I did was,
yeah, like what?
like I got deep on that. Like the fact that when I flew on an airplane, right, if I was flying somewhere by myself, as I'm walking down the aisle, you know, I feel all eyes on me. And anyone with an empty seat next to them, I know what's going on in their head. Like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't have this seat, right?
Oh, man.
And then when I did find my seat, I would have to get there and I would just have to squish myself between those armrests. And I would stand with my arms folded and my shoulders in, just trying not to overflow onto whoever was next to me. And it unsuccessfully, right? So I was doing that. And then after the flight attendant did the demonstration with the little buckle, back when they used to do that, I used to have to call over the flight attendant and borrow that just to extend the seat because it wouldn't even fit me so that I could buckle up. So all this attention that I was drawing to myself by being this big, like there were a lot of embarrassing moments. There were a lot of painful moments, like wedging yourself into a seat and sitting there for a 3 or 4 hour flight in pain is really hard. That's the stuff you just try to mask or forget about. But the biggest thing was I looked back to an experience that I had had with my wife and my first son, Evan, when we went to the local carnival that came to town. And we were walking around, we're new parents. We have an 18-month-old and my wife is pregnant with our second baby. So we're walking around and you know, I know that you know this because you have kids, but new parents don't know what's going on, right? And when
Yes.
Exactly.
I know, I do know that, yes.
and at this point, I mean, my kids started to actually be able to communicate and stuff. Like he wasn't really talking very well, but we're walking around the fair and I'm holding him here on my shoulder and we come around, you know, one of these stands and there's lights buzzing and he's like looking around and he's seeing everything and it's exciting. And then we come around the corner and he sees the train, like just this little kiddie train that's going in circles. But, you know, he had the Thomas toys at home and he had the tracks at home and we would play with that. And he saw a train that he could ride and he just I could just feel the excitement in him when he saw this. And as a new parent, like that was the first time that I actually sensed that, hey, you know, there's like a person in here and it's excited right now. Like that was cool. So we walk over and he's going to go on the train ride. And so he's happy and he's excited. And I'm the proud dad because my son is going to have this experience. He's going to go on the train ride. So we get close to the attendant and I just naturally go and I pull him right off my chest and I go to hand him to my wife, right? Because it never for an instant entered the thought that never entered my mind that I could take him on this train. Like there's no way. So as I go to pull him off my chest, like he's pulling on my shirt, right? And what I think to myself is that exactly that he wants me to take him on the train, but he doesn't know that I don't fit on the train, right? So I pull him away a little bit. He goes to my wife. He grabs my wife. They give their tickets and they walk in and they go and they sit down on the train. Now at this point, the kid probably has no idea that I exist anymore because he's on the train, right? So he's fine.
But where are you at in your headspace then? Yeah.
So I'm standing here and I'm just watching, right? And then the attendant says, "Excuse me, sir, you have to wait over there." And he tells me to go wait over on the side. And I'm literally standing behind a metal gate, right? Like a metal fence is keeping me, you know, outside of this experience that my son is about to have, that my wife and son are having. So the train is going around and I have to stand out here and watch as he's on the train laughing. My wife is there. She's probably a little bit uncomfortable also because she's pregnant. She's sitting on the train.
I lost track of that part too. Wow. Yeah.
But this is, and then I think to myself and I think, you know, is this the kind of father that I'm going to be? Or is this the kind of husband that I'm going to be to this woman that I love, right? That we have this commitment to each other, and we're only getting started. You know, here I am. I feel like an observer, like an outsider in this experience that my family is able to have without me. And like thinking back and realizing those things, I mean, that's where I knew that something had to change. Like I had to do something about it, because the only reason I could come up with for not being able to experience this is because I put too much food into my mouth. Like, and on that level, that's the most ridiculous thing in the world, right? Like logically.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, even like it sounds like you remember details of that day like it were yesterday, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really impactful to me, you know. And then it makes me realize all the times that I've been on the sidelines. You know, my wife has been a runner since school. She ran cross country and stuff. And I'm always the one who drives her to the race. I sit there, I watch her at this, you know, I help hang out with her at the start line. I hold her, you know, whatever her jacket or sweatshirt is while she's running. And then I you know, watch her as she goes by, maybe give her a high five, take a couple pictures and meet her at the finish line. Like I spent a lot of my life on the sidelines, you know, watching other people do stuff. And the fact that I started kind of telling myself that and actually digging into that, like it made me not want to be like that. I don't know how
Because,
else to really say it.
well, what I hear you saying, and I'll reflect it back to you, tell me if I'm getting it, but I'm hearing that you did what a lot of us, and I say us because I can relate to it too, and I think that if we had everyone on screen now who's watching who can relate to this, they'd be nodding, which is you internalized so much more than you ever realized going back to childhood, going back to elementary school. You know, there was so much stuff that you experienced, like the plane rides, and you would just get through it, and you'd feel anxious, and you would feel overwhelmed, and you'd probably dread it, and it'd be stressful, and it'd be emotional, but you had gotten really good at just probably putting that in the container and pretending that it didn't exist. And it sounds like it was like that container reached capacity at that point in your life, and there was no more stuffing that stuff. And that moment at the carnival was like the moment where the lid came off, and you had to feel that, you had to encounter that. And I'm sure that must have been so painful, so hard.
Yeah, it was. And looking back, I believe it is exactly as you described it. In the moments, you know, these little things, you just get used to deflecting them and to going through them. And I don't really know the kind of cumulative buildup of that and how it works. And that's why I said when I started that it was a series of accidents, because, you know, I got to the point where, you know, between the insurance policy, causing myself to do this reflection, the fact that it happened at a time where I was having kids, and this was something that was more important than me, and that I actually had to be in this position where I needed to, like, they don't have anyone else. Kids have their parents, that's it, right? And you know, all these things added up that I just knew more than ever that I had to figure out how to make this work. I had to do something to fix this. And at this point, it wasn't about looking good, right? And it wasn't really about fitting into that train ride. It was really about getting healthy and knowing that I could be an active part of my family's life. You know, whatever that looked like.
And again, Anthony, I mentioned it in previous broadcasts. You and I touched on it in our pre-call, but it's incredible to me that when I've done academic research that we can literally say, let me ask you, give me one question. It's like one bullet in the gun. That's all I need to know whether or not you're going to be set up for success. And that's the question of why. Why do you want to do this? And usually what we found is that whys that work long term, and it's no coincidence that you're 12 years into this, and doing so well and inspiring others, is that it's a why that on one hand is bigger than you, right? And it's a why that's bigger than just wanting to look better, or even in a sense feel better. It has to be, it has to be legacy based. It has to be, have an impact that's greater than you. And I hear that so much in your why. Your rock bottom moment led to
Yeah.
this why that was so much bigger than you. And it sounds like, so really it became about being active, getting off the sidelines like that. That was the part of rewriting your story that I think must have been so big. And so, wow. So you then go into this weight loss transformation,
Yep.
and
So
I know
even
there's,
worse than that.
yeah,
So I started. So I didn't know what to do. Obviously, I didn't know what to do because I haven't been able to successfully do it
yeah,
in up until this point. So I I just said, okay, I know I have no place in my life for soda or sweets. So I
so you
gave
cut
up
that out.
all kinds of desserts and all kinds of sweets. And then I started trying to go by portion control. And I basically kept myself hungry. And it was at this point in time, I was denied the insurance policy at the end of October. It was coming up, so I started for a New Year's resolution going into 2006.
Mm.
No more sweets, no more soda, and I set a goal to lose 50 pounds for that year. And I
And that
really didn't know how I was going to do it.
sounds like what a lot of people, like we've all been there, done that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's January. A
yeah,
lot of people are doing it right now, right?
yeah,
So
totally.
so the worst part though is all the way until March. I had not had a sip of soda. I had not had a single dessert, cookie, or any bit of sweets, anything like that. And I had not lost any weight at all.
And
And
that's like, and I mean, again, like I'm going to go back to just, maybe it's because I relate to it so much, but I always say when the more that you go through it, like the more you go through the yo-yo cycle, the more it just like wears on you psychologically, and it creates more hopelessness. Like, how the heck did you, I mean, I know that you had a big why, man, but you
yeah,
were up against a lot. Like to go through all of that, all that effort that you put forth and to not lose weight, why not fold right then?
yeah. Well, because it was so important to me. And
Ah,
my why was, now I know looking back, my why was strong enough to carry me through for a long time until I was able to get momentum,
yes,
right?
yes,
So then
yes.
what I did was I just kept searching. And I should also mention that I was vegetarian because that time
Mm,
I tried to lose weight in the early 90s. I gave up meat and alcohol in the early 90s because I knew that they weren't helping for me. And I never went back. So I'm already a 360-pound vegetarian. Everything was at the time, 2006, everything was Atkins, high protein, all of this stuff. I didn't want to go for that. That's why I was trying to do my own thing. So I
mm,
just kept searching for how to lose weight on a vegetarian diet, and I found Dr. Joel Furman's book Eat to Live on Amazon. I
mm.
just found it accidentally like that. But I did read
And
I
what
read the
happens when you
reviews,
find
and
that book
people
then?
said, so I just read about it, and it said basically you'll get healthy and the weight loss is a side effect.
And
And I
for
said, hey,
you, that resonated because that's
that's
where
right
you
up
were
my
at.
alley.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right,
That's what I
right.
wanted. I mean, I
Hmm.
wanted to lose the weight, but I only wanted to lose the weight because that was my only kind of external indicator of what was going on inside.
Well, and that
That
lets
I
you get
was
that lets you
unhealthy.
get back in the game and off the sidelines. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I ordered that book. Within 2 months, by the time we brought my son Henry, now my second, when he was born, in that 2 months, I lost over 30 pounds. Like
Wow.
that's how hard I went after it, and that's how well it worked for me. Like
And did
I
it?
was primed, ready to go.
You were primed, ready to go. Did it feel like it was the hardest 2 months of your life, or what was that for you? Yeah, like.
No, it felt like a different 2 months, but that's really what I was looking for. Like I didn't want to feel the same. I didn't want to keep doing the things I was doing. I just didn't know what to do. So I just started adding fruits and vegetables and beans, nuts and seeds, just like just like the book said. Just eat all plant foods
Hmm.
and almost nothing else. So
Mm.
that's how I transitioned. And I transitioned aggressively. I didn't go overnight because I didn't know what I was doing. I was making mistakes, 6 months into this, but I transitioned really aggressively over probably a 4 month period. And I lost that big bump, that 30 pounds in the first 2 months, and then I lost 8 pounds a month, like a clock, like every single month. I just kept doing it, and I kept making little tweaks and making it a little bit better, and getting rid of a little bit, getting rid of more stuff that was not purely whole plant foods, and just eating more and more whole plant foods. And by the end of the year, I ended up losing 90 pounds by the end of 2006. So I completely blew away that goal of 150 pounds. I was off my blood pressure medicine.
Wow.
And I had energy that I had never had before in my life.
Wow. And you already acted, like you said, too. But take me back like a little bit. Like, as the weight starts to come off, what's happening to you mentally? What's happening to you emotionally? Anything noteworthy that was happening as you started losing weight?
Not really, because we had a toddler and a newborn. And
yeah, so if there was, you
it
probably
was not about
remember,
me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And also with the newborn, having our the second kid at home, like, it really was just, it was work, take care of the kids. Like, there wasn't a lot else going on. So I didn't see a lot of my friends during that period, which really then made it even a bigger shock when I did see them, when I was down the weight. But myself, I didn't really see it. I mean, I saw the numbers on the scale changing, but I look back at my transformation pictures, and it really wasn't until the end of that year, till I was down 80 or so pounds, that I really started to feel like, wow, I feel different and I look different. And that's probably when I started buying new clothes. Like, I think the first 50 or 60 pounds, I was still in the same clothes. Maybe they fit a little bit looser, things like that. But by the time I lost 90 pounds, then I was different. And I had energy. And that's when I decided to set another New Year's resolution. And then that's when I decided to start exercising. So I do want to take a second to just to note that I lost that first 90 pounds without doing an ounce of exercise.
Amazing. And again, that probably just blows people away. So I'm glad that you highlight that.
Yeah. People, and when I say not an ounce of exercise, I was home with a newborn and a toddler. That's it.
So not only that, I mean, because there goes another theory too, right? Of like cortisol and all the stress hormone was probably active in your body. So you're not exercising. You probably have higher levels of stress of what you're doing, but this new way of eating is so powerful for you that it's not being slowed down at all in terms of your ability to get healthy.
Yeah. So, and I don't even know what's happening, but I knew I was losing weight, and like that momentum. The other thing I did feel was the momentum, and like looking at that scale, I was proud every time I stepped on that scale, and that had never happened to me before.
Amazing. Hey, real quick, I want to say this, Anthony. In terms of time, like just for me, I want to keep going. I know some people think that we're ending in the next 5 minutes or so, and people got questions.
I don't even know when it is.
Tons of stuff going through, but I'm like lost in this. Is it cool if we just keep talking a little longer?
I'm fine.
Yeah, cool.
So anyway,
you start losing this weight. Yeah. I had a question for you on that.
Sure.
At what point in your transformation then, because I know you're building up here to when you lose the final amounts of weight, but at any point in your transition, do you start noticing that your story starts to shift? Like, could you still tell the story about yourself of like, I'm just the big guy, or, I don't want to intimidate people knocking on doors, like, or did that type of stuff start to fall off at certain points in your journey?
So I really started feeling more self-confident and more proud of myself because I was accomplishing something that I had never been able to do before. And
self-confidence, pride. Yeah, that was new for your story.
That was brand new for me. And I was being tested a lot, and I was still having to deflect. And what I mean by that is that, people were still asking me what I was doing. And I was very happy to just tell them, look, I'm just doing my own thing. I have to do this for me. So I never tried to bring anyone else along with me. Not my wife, not my friends, not anyone else. I said, okay, I'm just doing this. I'm taking care of myself.
But that's like more of the theme for you of like not wanting to draw attention to yourself. So that part of the story kind of almost remained, huh?
Yeah. And well, really what happened is people questioned. It was really a way for me to not answer questions about what I was doing or why it was working. People were asking, some of my friends would joke with me and ask if I was sick, like what's wrong? Why are you losing so much weight? Other people would say, oh, you look very different, but they would say it in shock, but it wouldn't come out like as a compliment right away, but they would just say, oh, you look different. But and that's where I kind of kept myself isolated, in that I just said, okay, I'm just taking care of what I need to do. I'm healthier than ever. I see my doctor, every couple of weeks. She's got me off my medication. She's monitoring my weight. And she was not a plant-based doctor, but she was very supportive of what I was doing. So I just wanted to keep myself on track, and I didn't want to have conversations where people were going to be trying to tell me what to do, because people told me what to do my whole life, and it didn't work. So now I was doing something myself that did work, and I just didn't want to open myself up to be questioned or to be misunderstood or interpreted or anything like that. I'm like, I'm just taking care of myself.
Yeah, you were locked in on that. So the things that are starting to unfold, though, confidence, pride, and as you're getting close, I want you you're telling this linear story of coming up, and I want you to continue that as you lost the last leg of that weight. But one thing I'm wondering is, it sounds like you and your wife have been together for quite a while. You mentioned college. How long have you guys been together now for?
Yeah, well, we've been friends since the early since like 91. We've known each other and been friends. It took me a long time to convince her that we should be more than friends. That took a couple years.
That's a whole other interesting story that we could dive into. Yeah,
I wore her down, and so we started dating, I guess, in probably 95, 96, something like that, and then we moved in together in probably like 98 or so, and we got married in 2000.
Very cool. Very cool.
I hope I don't get quizzed on that later, but I think it's something like that.
Yeah. By the time
we've been together a long time.
She'll be in bed. So like you won't get quizzed. She won't see this, right? No, but you've been together a long time, I guess. So one of the things that I'm wondering, and by the way, I wanted to say this too, like, for a guy that doesn't have a lot of confidence, that was what I would call a unique outcome. You were persistently, pursuing her. That says something about how you felt about her. Because for a guy that didn't want to draw attention to himself or was afraid to, that's really courageous. And I want to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, totally. When you got to that point, though, that you start to, you're losing significant weight, there's a stage people go through, I found in my research and in my work, where people start treating you different, right? Like, and you're telling your friends and family do, but like society does too, and it's natural too to get like attention from the opposite sex and stuff like that. Did you have blinders on to that, or could you kind of pick some of that up as it was happening?
As I started to lose more weight, I mean, people were just incredibly supportive. People were really nice to me. People who I had known for years, they came up to me, "Oh, Anthony, you look great." And I didn't think any more into it than it just put a big smile on my face. And it really just supported that I felt like I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. But like, in terms of like, I have some folks that will tell me, it's almost uncomfortable to feel like, women are a little more flirtatious or men are more flirtatious, and like, did you experience any of that, like, as you would go through your transformation, or did it feel like you tried to kind of just keep that at arm's length, minimize it, or?
I don't feel like women have ever been flirtatious to me. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I've interpreted a woman's behavior as being flirtatious towards me. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I just never picked up on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, growing up, I didn't have that in me. In fact, if someone was if there was a girl that was too nice to me in school, I almost feel like I was going to like be getting punked somehow or something like that. Like there was going to be a trick played on me. So I just accepted these things as face value, but I never put more into it. And some of that probably carried forward. I mean, I didn't notice that women were flirting with me, but men and women, both were being supportive. People who I was close to were just being very supportive. "Oh, Anthony, you look great," stuff like that. So it may have happened, and it may have flown right over my head. I don't know.
And my guess on that is probably that's the case. I mean, and that's surely based on other stories that I've sat with, and and knowing that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like if we don't incorporate in our story that we're worthy of that sort of attention, then we probably don't really recognize it when it comes our way, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's interesting, and I think a lot of people resonate with that. And so for your wife, there wasn't like this period of like feeling like almost like, gosh, this is a big change. Like now you're getting, like, did you guys talk about the changes much of like how are people treating you differently, or it just wasn't something that came up a
Not
lot?
really. Not really. I mean, we spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot of time with the kids. I mean, the kids were still, they were still very young. Well, they were very young while I was going through this transition. And we talk a lot. We were best friends before we were dating. So we always had that kind of relationship where, as I was learning things, I'm like, hey, I just figured this out. Or, I remember I would read like the frequently asked questions, because there wasn't Facebook and stuff like that when I was doing this, right? So
Right.
I could find a couple blogs, maybe one or two blogs. I could read, the back of the book. They had frequently asked questions and see what other people were asking and answering and stuff like that. And we would talk about all of that stuff. So I feel like she was coming along with me. She she knew what and why I was going through it. And we really got kind of deep on what is a really truly healthy diet, learning that this other stuff, that everything we thought was normal is actually probably not correct, or that we thought was healthy was not correct. So we were doing all of that stuff, and I don't know that she was noticing that people were treating me differently either. I really don't think so.
Yeah. What was there any big struggles? Because I'll tell you, like, I don't know, a lot of people don't know this statistic, but the divorce rate is 75% when one partner goes through a weight loss transformation.
Wow.
Again, so 3 out of 4 couples get split. And we, so usually there's some sort of like, there's some challenges that come up in that process, whether it's resistance, which I'm not hearing there was a lot. Like your wife is super supportive, which is amazing. But like,
Yeah.
was there any adjustments that were hard for you guys that you went through, or no?
Really not for the two of us. And as I'm thinking about it, I think it's probably because the reason that I was losing the weight. I was losing the weight to become a tighter piece of this family that I already
Yes.
had. I was pulling myself into this. And as I was getting healthy and stuff, I was just embracing that more and more. And I was getting
Mm.
more and more excited about this family that we had
Ooh, yeah,
together.
I
You
got to
know,
interject on that. Like, it's just a thought that's coming to my mind. But what you said was huge, and you're teaching me something here too, in the sense that, going back to the why. Your why was so grounded in the right long-term stuff that when you did go through those changes, that other stuff wasn't even on your radar. However, if someone's why is really grounded in, I want to just look better, which again, I always say, hey, we all want to look better, feel better, but if that's the only reasons why we want to lose weight, we have to re-examine, because long term it's not going to hold up. Research shows. But if you really wanted just to look better, then yeah, like that would have been a stage that potentially could have been dangerous, or maybe that's why it is dangerous for 3 out of 4 couples. But for you, it was like, no, like I'm getting my reward fulfilled by being off the sidelines and involved with my family.
yeah, exactly. And now that you say that, if somebody wants to look better, they might be looking for that external validation in the forms of like flirtation and things like that.
100%,
But
100%.
I just never was. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a testament, I think, to your long-term success. So you go through this, and finish that last leg of it though,
Yeah.
because I think
So
you
the
said
last
like,
leg is
yeah.
easy. So between January and September of 2007, two things happened. I kept eating the plant-based diet 100% the way I was doing it, and I started running. And I got to the point where I went from where I couldn't even run for a full minute, without taking a walk, stopping and taking a walk break, to by that September, I ran my first half marathon in like an hour and 47 minutes.
If
So,
if Anthony, who was in, like junior high,
Right.
was able to sit there and just watch you cross that finish line. What the heck would he have said to the Anthony that
Yeah.
runs this half marathon? Like, I mean, really though, like,
He
what would
wouldn't
he
have
have
even
said?
recognized them.
He would have just like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's some guy, that's some other guy
That's
running
not
by.
me.
But that was never in your lexicon of possibilities for yourself, I imagine, right?
Right. Yeah. And I exercised. And I never even I love to skateboard. I love to snowboard. Even as a big guy, I was active. I could ride a bicycle, I could ride a dirt bike. I could do these things. But I never made the connection between being physically fit and being able to do those things better. Like like I thought that you could do a hand plant on a skateboard even if you couldn't do a handstand on the street, like with your body
Right,
weight. Like
right,
like
right.
I could never do either one. I'm not trying to claim that I could, but I never linked those two. So I never tried to exercise, or I never, thought that I needed to be strong for anything. So the fact that I wanted to exercise was really cool. The fact that it came so quick and so easy. I went from running, like I said, from running that, not being able to run at all for a minute, to running like 35 and 40-mile weeks within a 9-month period and enjoying every single step of it. Like, it never felt like, I was out there working hard. I was always trying to go a little bit faster. I was always trying to go a little bit further or a little bit longer on the clock. But it was always an enjoyable experience, and that was so foreign, but it was cool. So then by September, my weight loss just stopped. Like,
You said an Huffington Post article, and I was telling this to my wife because it's so interesting. You said, and just like that, the weight loss stopped as quickly as it
it
started, or
really
something
did.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. 100, the end of August, 197 pounds. The end of September, 197 pounds. The end of October, 197 pounds. Fast forward to today, like 205 pounds. So
Just
I'm
right in
I'm
that same
within that
range.
6 or 7. Like, I've hovered right around that 200-pound mark. A
Mm,
little bit over, a little bit under, for the past 11 years.
wow.
Yeah, and it
11
just
years.
stays. Yeah, it just
11
stays.
years.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if you've heard this statistic. In some people, you could argue that whether it's inflated or in some ways maybe really, really accurate. But the percentage of people, medical research has shown, that keep weight off, and I don't think this is in the plant-based community. I think it's a better percentage, but 95% of people who lose a drastic amount of weight will gain it back within 5 years or less. And that's, by the way, like, I'm not here to be doomsday and throw
Yeah,
that
yeah.
out. I'm here to, and I'm not even necessarily here to say like, hey, let's crack the code. I'm really here just to say that we're obviously needing more new approaches, whether it's
Yes.
plant-based eating or whether it's emotional support, whatever it is, we need more. But like, have you ever really stopped to think that yeah, that's the number. In 5 years, most people gain it back. Man, you're in 11 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes I feel like, can I even still talk about this? Um,
Knock
but
on
the
wood.
truth
Yeah.
is, yeah, and I don't mean because I gained it back. I was very cautious in the beginning. I didn't write up my story and send it into Dr. Furman's website for 2 years. And then I
Because
didn't.
you were afraid of like
I just
what,
wanted,
jinxing it, or
yeah,
are you
well, not even jinxing it, but I didn't want to be a fraud. I wanted to make sure it was going to
mm,
last
your
before I did
integrity?
it.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's helpful for me to continue. I mean, this discussion is helpful for me. All these things. Every time I get to share my story, every time I get to tell it, or every time I get to share my insights on what I've learned over the past 12 years, um, it also helps me. It helps to keep me on track. So I enjoy doing it for what it can do for others, and I absolutely enjoy doing it for what it does for me.
It's so amazing to me when I hear stories like yours, and I know you guys got tons of questions. This has been so amazing, and we'll get to those questions here in a minute. Um, but what's so amazing to me is when I interview people, and this has happened just most about every week, which is a good sign, I think, for the folks I've interviewed. But like when you just hear people hitting on the research points where you're like, oh yeah, that's linked to long-term success. Oh yeah. And that final stage that we talk about in the program is pay it forward. And
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
research just shows that people who are successful long-term are in some way, shape, or form, informal or informal roles of paying forward the gift that's been given to them of new health, the knowledge that they've been given, the support they've been given, the encouragement. And what we find is that when you're paying it forward actively, a couple of things happen. Number one, other people are getting blessed by your experience, and other people are getting transformed. But on top of that, it almost cements this new part of your story. And in that way, like, do you ever stop and, like, do you consider yourself a coach or an expert, a health expert, a health coach? Do you consider those things? Like, are those elements that would define who Anthony is now, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I do get to do some coaching for people, and I have tried to make myself an expert on all things around the mindset, like all the things. And really, the weird part is these are all the things I want to talk to you about today.
Really?
But how we deal with our self-talk. We
Mm,
dug really deep on the why. How we deal with the things that we tell ourselves, and how that just
yes.
manifests itself into our existence by all these cues and things that we set up for ourselves, probably without even knowing it, and
Yeah.
how to treat this as like a lifetime investment. As this is not about the quick win. This is not about bikini season and stuff like that. How
Yes.
all of these things add up. And this is all part of what I said before, was this series of accidents, or this perfect storm of coincidences that came together for me. But now I'm able to look back on it and almost see this pattern, or see this formula. And then, it validates when I talk to so many other people, because I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. Like you had Adam on, you've had others on. You're gonna be having other people who I already know their stories, and it's been the same similar kind of alignment. So what I really want to do now is figure out how to help to stack those things up for people, so that they can kind of turbocharge their own change. And
Mm,
it's
love it.
I don't want to make it easier for them, because I believe that the work has to happen, the work has to be done, but I want to make it faster for them, and I want to make it kind of lasting for them.
Yeah.
I
Well,
feel like we've got too much handhold. They're like, I feel like we've been trying to handhold people by telling them exactly what to do, and by walking them through some kind of process, and it doesn't always let people do the internal work that they need to do. Like, I'd rather
mm,
see a series of exercises,
hmm,
that people have to do in order to get themselves from point A to B to C to D to E.
right.
Or step through steps 1 through 8. As you've got them
Right.
laid out, rather
Right.
than trying to push or handhold them. Because then when we let go, then what happens?
Yeah. Well, and in the same way, like, we can give them all of, again, it's only in the West, do we view this, we have a medical doctor that we go for the body, and we have a mental health therapist that we go for the mind, and we go to our church for our spirit, and we go, it's like, the reality is all this stuff is interconnected.
Yep.
And so, if we're doing a body transformation, we also must be tuned into the other parts of our body and our spirit and our mind that are going through the transformations too, if we want to be successful. And I just think that, unfortunately, that is one of the problems. Like, we'll tell people, hey, just eat this way. And like you and I were saying, but then what happens if you know how to eat, but you still don't follow through? A lot of times there's something under the surface that we need to kind of get at. I think this is just obvious to me. But I'm like excited just to continue to get to know you, and what's obvious to me is that you and I can probably together help a lot of people, and yeah, you just, like, before even meeting you, I just picked up on your energy, that you just got a lot of passion, and it's really cool though too to
Definitely.
hear that, like, what I'm really excited about your story, a lot of elements, like, one of them is the fact that you're able to sit here today and go, I am a health expert. And I'm really glad, because if you weren't going to encourage that or put that in as part of your story, I was, because you are, man, you are a health expert. You are inspiring people. And there was a time in your life where I know you probably never could imagine that. That is truly rewriting your story, and I just think it's awesome.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I see it continuing. I see more collaboration to be had. Um, it's probably a good time to take some questions. I have a couple more thoughts I wanted to share with you.
Sure.
I got John Gomez over here, who people are going to know about John. John does amazing, has amazing heart, and he's doing some work right now in a master's program to become a therapist. He's going to have his own practice one day, and right now he's just soaking all this stuff up and being the moderator and helping me out with the technology. So, John, thank you for all your help, man. And yeah, what are people saying on the questions?
They're just loving his story. I do have
awesome.
A couple questions. Some have been answered in the comments, but I personally have a question if you guys don't mind.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Please. And John has had to put up with some of my friends' silly comments too. I saw that.
Right.
And then also he was talking about when he was going on flights and things like that. Like what comes to my mind is some people that find themselves in that predicament, they can get angry at those types of things, and then rather than letting it fuel them, which he obviously did, it can kind of like cripple you a little bit.
Right.
And so my question is does he have any advice or any type of thought changing process as to let anger or let whatever emotion fuel you rather than cripple you in that kind of.
Did you hear that question?
Yeah. So I think the only thing I didn't hear was the example. I think he said it was the example of getting on the plane flight, right?
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, I've learned, and I find it incredibly powerful to know that we have choices. So we can't control what happens. We can't control what other people do. And we have very little control over what happens around us. But we have absolute control over how we respond to it. And we can get angry, and we can blame other people, and we can blame our situation. And what I've learned and how I have learned to look at it, and it's not easy, is that doing those things gives away all of our power to do anything about it. Like we basically just externalized everything, and we really kind of solidified this kind of victim position or this vulnerable position where the external world around me shapes who I am, right? Or like the life insurance policy. I could have said that company doesn't know what they're talking about. Right? I could have just said, oh, you know, it was a bad day, whatever. They got my records messed up. I'm going to go apply somewhere else. Right?
Or I could say, taking that as discouragement.
Right. Or gotten furious or angry or any of those things. Or I could say, this is what it means, and I can do something about it. So I call it, you know, like I try to respond, and I try to help other people to respond in a way that serves your purpose or serves your own mission, right?
Is that something no, that's amazing. And that's, John's really into mindset and all about, he wants to help people change their mindset. I know that's his big passion. Is that something that you found along the way? Like, did you find that along the way, or were you living that? Like,
I read everything that I can read. Like, I read everything I can get my hands on. I mean, you know, I crank through a book a week. I get to listen to them actually because I drive a lot. So
you go Audible or
I get my hands on everything I can. But what I've done was I've tried to figure out my own journey and what made it work for me this time that hasn't made it work, that wouldn't allow it to work for me in the past. And then I noted, you know, and in all of this studying, and I learned from other people's experiences and examples and the teachings that are, you know, and all this stuff that I'm reading, but it helps me to continue my own path forward. But that was a big one for me, like really. And I love the mindset too, John. And because I think it's so important, and especially for the sustainability, but that idea of learning how to brush off the stuff that doesn't serve me. Like getting angry doesn't do anything for me, you know, but if I can pick up something that leads me to take action, you know, or to make a change myself, then that's something I can do something about. And it can be as important as, you know, my not getting the life insurance policy, or it can even be jealousy, right? Like, what do I do when I see, you know, and this is just a superficial example. This isn't something that's real, but it's something I can relate to. You know, like, let's say somebody else gets 1 million likes on their pictures and I only get 100 likes on my picture. You know, like, like it's very easy to blame them or to look for excuses on why someone else is more, you know, more popular or more impactful or something. Or I just look at it and say, okay, well, I just still have work to do, you know, like, And I use that example, not that I'm trying to get maximum likes on my pictures, but I just feel like it's
No, I
something
get
that
what you
people
mean.
can relate to. And I do see that some people get caught up on that stuff. And I don't ever believe that putting someone else down is helpful for anyone. So why would I want to look for flaws in them or reasons why they can do that and I can't? I rather look for ways that I can, right? And try to turn that around in a way that will actually serve what I'm trying to do, which could be reach more people, right? Or actually impact more people versus, versus the opposite. I don't know. Does that answer the question, John?
I think it does. Yeah. No, it absolutely does. I don't think, I know it does. And
Yeah.
it absolutely does. One of the things that you said in there that I think I want to just highlight too is the fact that, so in a positive sense, when we're reminded that we have choices, we feel a sense of being empowered.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the common denominators, one of the kissing cousins of depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, is this sense of powerlessness, right? And it's also a kissing cousin of hopelessness. When we start to feel consumed by this sense of doom, a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, do I feel like I have any power right now? And if not, it's doing what you're saying and go, okay, well, I have a choice right now. And it's
Yeah.
almost like scaffolding, peeling back the layers all the way down to, in this very moment, what is the one thing that I could do that could make me feel empowered to have a sense of choice? It would have been so easy for you to, in that moment of being denied, or in that moment after being denied for the life insurance policy, where you didn't lose weight, it would have been so easy for you to simply go back into this powerless, hopeless place.
Yeah.
But instead, and that it's such a great mindset. Instead, you really were empowered by the fact that I have choices, and that was how you chose to view them. There's one thing I'll add, and then I know we'll need to wrap because I think my son, it's bath time.
Good.
Stages of change, I think, is to almost like to answer your question. It's an interesting thing that I want to chat with you more about sometime. Are you familiar with the stages of change model? Yeah. So it's interesting, I think kind of what you're getting at, and some more stuff that we could chat about and stuff to point you in the direction of is taking what you already have in terms of like this mindset approach, but also looking at that's such a fascinating question, and I would love to know what the literature says. It's a great research question. What can we do to move people through stages of change quicker, or how do we capitalize, in a sense, like you're saying, when they're in that stage of action? Like, how do we really capitalize on it? And that's kind of where I believe, if we treat more of not just the symptom, but we treat what's underneath too, that we can really get long-term sustainable change. So anyway.
And I would say I want to get them through at the right pace so that it's sustainable long-term. It doesn't, for me, it took me 20 months to lose the weight. If it would have taken me 40 months, if it would have taken me 60 months, to lose the weight and get healthy, who cares? The important thing that I'm realizing is that it stays off.
Because again, your goal was to not be focused on the scale or focused on, the external stuff. It was focused on, hey, if you're going to tell me that I'm going to be around, it's about, I always say it's a journey, not a destination. And we're trying to extend the finish line out as far as possible. If your finish line was going to be 55, you want it to be 85 or 95 or 105, right? We're just trying to extend the finish line out. And if you're really getting caught up on, those other things, then chances are that says a lot about what your why is. So that's another great reminder. And the people that are listening right now, again, it's January. I know it's great to have goals, but again, we have to make this stuff bigger than weight loss. Anthony's story is like 100% that. You, man, I'll tell you, it's going to be just fascinating to watch. Like, I already see doors opening up for you to share your story. But I don't think those doors are going to stop opening up anytime soon. I think it's only going to continue to happen. No, not at all. Because you're very grounded, and you're very grounded, and you have such a good sense of what this is really about. And you have such an amazing, an amazing story to tell, and such amazing things to give to people. And so, as I mentioned to you on the pre-call, like, I just, whatever I can do to be a part of getting you in front of more people, as we all lift each other up,
Definitely.
I definitely want to, man. And one thing too is that you really get this side of the journey. I can definitely say that you do. You get the emotional side matters. And one of the things that it makes me realize is that, like, because we were going in here and going, well, am I an emotional eater? Like, one of the things about, like, even if we decide that that is off the table, we still have collateral emotional damage from being overweight in a weight shaming society that we have to at some point deal with as we go through our weight loss journey. And that's something that I think stood out in your story too. And it reminds me that even if we're not emotional eaters, hey, we still have to deal with what it means, the messaging we get and what we internalize, like you said, about what it means to be a big guy or a big woman in today's world, where there's so much focus on size and what that means about your identity. Anyway, so that stands out to me big time. And anyway, I don't know. I just had such a good time talking with you.
Me too. And I just want to say thanks again. So thanks for having me on here, and really for helping me to open up my story and to expose it like that. And also thanks for all the other people you're having on here. I've enjoyed watching all of your shows, and
thank you.
And I love that you're bringing this out for more people to make it more accessible to everyone, because as we also know, people just need to know it's possible, and people need to know. So by you having this show, it's just going to help so many people just by getting all these things out here. And especially, like, I'll say it again, especially from the psychological and the behavior, and all the stuff that happens in the mind around there. The fact that you're able to put that perspective on it, I think is just going to even make it more powerful for people.
I appreciate that. I do. I just want to be a part of the team. Everyone's doing so much amazing stuff. And I don't think it's one person has all the answers. I just think I could be a part of the team. And I'll tell you that I'm going to hear it tomorrow, because this is what I love, is that I go into session tomorrow. I see about 18 to 20 clients a week. And I've had clients that tell me over and over how impactful this stuff is. I've had some clients tell me they watch this show. Numerous clients tell me they watch it over and over. And the reason for it is because it tells them that they're not all alone. It gives them hope. It continues to empower them. It reminds them they have choices. And, we need that. And this is something that is so silenced. What we're talking about, unfortunately, doesn't get talked about on Facebook Live, and it hardly gets talked about in private Facebook groups or coffee shops. And so I just believe that it's through your courage, that you sharing your story, that we're going to continue to empower more people to be able to share theirs. And we're going to expand the level and the ways we support people in their transformation. So
for sure. Well, thanks
again. Love it, man. Yeah, and let's stay in touch, because
for sure.
I want to run with you. My journey started in September. I protest the scale, so I don't know how much weight I've lost, but I know that I've gotten some off. And you guys, just from watching you guys on Instagram, I went out and ran like 8 miles the other day.
I saw that. That was amazing.
I was just like, I'm just, and I was doing half marathons before. And you guys got me like, now I have to, because I just want to come out and hang out with all you guys and just chat.
I know the one picture you showed, like you were on some like dirt roads by the beach or by some cliffs or something that. Like that looked amazing.
Carmel. Yeah. Have you ever been out to California, like in the Carmel, Monterey area at all? Or
I've been out to California a few times. I don't know where I've been.
Yeah, I know. It's right. It's
but,
like
it looks
Jersey,
beautiful.
I don't know where I've been.
Yeah, but I don't think I was where I've been up in the mountains and stuff like, or in the hills, whatever it's called. And it's gorgeous out there. But that one picture you put, it looked like you were by the ocean and stuff, and on some dirt roads or something like that. It's amazing.
How do you not just run and not care about anything? It's like that. I know that. And when we have scenery like that, we got to do it. So we need to run together.
We will.
I need to meet you at some point. And
Definitely.
I'm also thinking too, my coach, Sharon McRae, I was going to ask you that. I wanted to fit that in. You know Sharon too, right?
Yeah, Sharon and I met each other through different social media groups, and then she runs an amazing meetup group down there in Columbia, Maryland that I'm itching, and I just can't wait to get down there to see it. And then
I got to go, and you got to go, man. We got to go
we
there.
both have to go. And she actually did, though, and I run a small meetup group here in New Jersey on the Ethos Health Farm, and Sharon and her family came up, and we hung out at the meetup, but then afterwards, we went for a great hike, in the woods together, with her and her husband and her 3 kids, and we had just had a great time with the families together and stuff. So, like I just keep saying it, we meet the most amazing people in the world on who are all on this path and all looking to help people. So it's really great.
And she's been behind the scenes, not just helping my journey, but also connecting me with you folks. Sharon, again, so much love for you, Sharon, and thanks to you and appreciation, not just for what you've done for me, but what you're doing for so many others. And she was the one that said, hey, reach out to Anthony. And then when I said, that name sounds familiar, when I Googled you, I saw the Forks Over Knives story. So anyway, just so cool to talk to you tonight, man. And let's stay in touch. And
we will, for sure.
And we'll do this another time too, if you're up for it. We'll do Facebook
I would love
Live
to.
again. Yeah, and we'll just continue to kind of unpack more of your story. And so, again, thank you so much. Now, Tim Kaufman, right? He's my guest next week.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be another great one.
Tim Kaufman, we got
he never disappoints.
Yeah, we got like this amazing lineup right now of folks. And so, tune in next week for Tim Kaufman, 6 p.m. West Coast time, 9 p.m. if you're on the East Coast. And just tune in and check out another episode of Rewriting Your Story. And in the meantime, please share this page, share this broadcast. The more places we get it, the more views that we get, the more impact it makes. And even if it's just one person that watches it and is inspired, that's enough, right? And so if you have questions, leave questions. Anthony, can you leave your contact, like not your cell phone number or anything like that, but like just how people would get in touch with you or follow you? Can you leave some of that in the thread too? That way we can have that.
Yep. I'll comment that in the thread, but Facebook, Anthony Masiello, Instagram, Masiello, but I'll write it in there. And I do just want to say thanks. I didn't get a chance to say anything to some of my new and old friends. I saw a lot of really familiar names.
Say it, man.
Scrolling
say it.
through.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thanks for watching, everybody. And my friends from high school, and now I see old snowboarder buddies are popping up on there. Like
that's
Kim,
so cool.
everybody. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Yeah.
Hey, and if you guys got reactions to what it was like to hear Anthony tell his story in this sort of way, it'd be really cool to get your perspective. So feel free to drop a comment and share with Anthony and share with our audience just what it was like to hear his story. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. And my brother Mike and my mom, everybody's watching.
Thanks, everybody. And it's late over there. Thank you guys for staying up. I really appreciate that. Again, Anthony, it's been such a pleasure. You and I are going to stay in touch. We're going to run together soon. Sure. We will let social media know about it so that way we can make sure that we chronicle that it happened.
Exactly.
But anyway, I hope you have a great night, and I will talk to you soon, and I'll see all the rest of you guys next week on Rewriting My Story with Dr. Mondo.
Thank you, Dr. Mondo. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.